Hello, St. Bernard's. Henry Gross with you today, and today my talk is called Paradigms and Paradigm Shifts. I recall a conversation I had with my brother-in-law, Father David Baltz, who is a Comboni missionary priest. He ministered in Uganda, Africa for over 40 years. We talked about him learning the native tongue of the Lugbara tribe. He pointed out how in many languages we use the same letters to express different ideas or concepts. He gave me an example of the letters SI. In Spanish, C is used to mean if, yes, himself, herself, themselves. In Italian, yes, himself, herself, themselves, one another, people. In French, if. And in the native Lugbara tongue, in, teeth, right, build, with, at, edge, grain, hail, scratch, mark, tear, scrape, pull, fit, resemble, knock, clean, descend, and through. The interesting thing here is it's the same two letters, S and I. And yet, depending on the cultural setting or the concepts being expressed in this combination of two letters, we can mean something completely different. Here is where we can look at this paradigm. For a Spaniard, SI means if and yes, etc. And in Lugbara, teeth, etc. But for David, Father David, SI means all of the meanings I described earlier. The paradigm shift came for Father David when he allowed himself to be open to learning the 7 different languages he speaks. Father David could have said, I'm going to stick with my native English, and the people I minister to will just have to deal with my way of communication. Rather, he chose to meet the people around him on their terms and meet their needs. Paradigms are part of what Stephen Covey describes in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. In the book, he details a time he experienced a shift in his paradigm. I remember a mini paradigm shift I experienced one morning on a subway in New York, he explains. People were sitting quietly, some reading newspapers, some lost in thought, some resting with their eyes closed. It was a calm and peaceful scene. Then suddenly, a man and his children entered the subway. The children were loud and rambunctious, that instantaneously the whole climate changed. The man sat down next to me, closed his eyes, apparently oblivious to the situation. The children were yelling back and forth, throwing things, even grabbing people's papers. It was very disturbing, and yet the man sitting next to me did nothing. It was difficult not to feel irritated. I could not believe he could be so insensitive to letting his children run wild and do nothing about it, taking no responsibility at all. It was very easy to see that everyone else on the subway was irritated too. So finally, with what I felt was unusual patience and restraint, I turned to him and said, "Sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you couldn't control them a little more." The man lifted his gaze as if to come to a consciousness of the situation for the first time, and he said softly, "Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. We just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago. I don't know what to think, and I guess they don't know how to handle it as well." Can you imagine what I felt about that moment? My paradigm shifted. Suddenly, I saw things differently. And because I saw differently, I thought differently, I felt differently, I behaved differently. Everything changed in an instant. So what changed for Stephen Covey? The characters in the story were all the same. What changed was coming to grips with not his own internal notion of what was going on, but the truth of the situation. This truth doesn't come from the newspaper he was reading or the other people in the subway, but the actual person who had false or mistaken judgments being placed upon him. The attitude found in the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11 still tries to creep into our workplaces, our churches, our personal lives. It works to keep us preoccupied with our own survival. A paradigm shift must take place for us to come to grips with the fact that life is not about me, myself, and I. Life is about others. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky, and so make the name for ourselves. Otherwise, we shall be scattered all over the earth." The Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the people had built. Then the Lord said, "If now, while they are one people and all have the same language, they have started to do this, nothing they presume to do will be out of their reach. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that no one will understand the speech of one another." So the Lord scattered them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the speech of all the world. From there the Lord scattered them all over the earth. This event occurred after the flood, and the commandment given to Noah and his descendants was to multiply and replenish the earth. The people chose to stay right where they were and make a name for themselves. They were not following through with God's plan. They had not experienced a paradigm shift. My question to you is this: is your world affecting you, or are you affecting your world? Are you a mover and a shaker, or are you stuck in the control of your own life story? This answer is simple and difficult at the same time. The answer is our own paradigm. Is our paradigm allowing us to experience life, or is it holding us back? A paradigm can be good when it allows us to make necessary shifts, but if it contains us, it is harmful. Let's explore the harmful paradigm. We have our life story, the one that we hang on to, the one that seems to keep our wheels spinning and never allows us to move forward. This is our paradigm, our carousel of life. Here is where the simple and the difficult meet. In order for us to have a paradigm shift, we need to first stop the carousel. This is not as simple as it sounds, but we must first recognize or admit that we are on that carousel to begin with before we can stop it or slow it down. However, just like a carousel, our paradigm has momentum. It is important to realize that we climb back onto the carousel. And when we get onto the carousel, even if we know the ride makes us sick. Why? Because that is all we've ever known or accepted. To slow down or break this momentum, we must recognize when we are on the carousel and get off. In order to be renewed, we must leave behind our old paradigm. Jesus asks us constantly to renew ourselves. From Romans 12, "Do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and pleasing and perfect." As I said earlier, a paradigm shift must take place for us to come to grips with the fact that life is not about me, myself, and I. Life is about others. Is your paradigm allowing you to experience life, or is it holding you back? Pray to the Lord and seek His wisdom. Maybe beginning to pray could be the first step in your paradigm shift.